Welcome to Mining Now, and we're in Montreal at the CIM Convention 2023. And I'm your host, Roy Slack. And for this episode, we're featuring SafeSight, and we're talking with Mike Campigotto, who is the president of SafeSight. And we're going to hear about some of the latest applications and some of the technology involved. And so let's start the show.
Sure
Welcome,
thing.
Mike.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. Nice to be back for episode 2. And you get 5 stars for the pronunciation of my last name. So we're off to a
Well,
good start.
full disclosure, I asked just
Yeah.
before to make
Hey,
sure.
I've told people before, and then what comes out of their mouth is undescribable. So you did well.
From now on, I just need to say Mike, so
Exactly.
we're safe.
We're golden. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So before we get into the business,
Sure.
and this is interesting for me, is what's your background personally? Because I know
Yeah.
you from a business perspective
Right.
and from SafeSight,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. I mean, I think it might be surprising to people that I do not have a mining background. I did not grow up in mining. I'm a technologist. I graduated from the University of Waterloo in mathematics and computer science and computer engineering, and had an entire career in that field in both private and public sector. The interesting thing about the sort of parallel paths that led me here is that for probably the last 15 years of my career, I focused on digital transformation, but it was in the healthcare industry and in the public sector in terms of digitizing a lot of the services that we all take for granted right now online, driver's license, birth certificates, all
okay,
of that
yeah,
infrastructure, and a lot of the challenges and the ups and downs and the adoption issues that the mining industry is, in my opinion, struggling with. And we want it, we don't want it. We're ready, we're not ready. We went through all of that in healthcare and in public services, and I did that not only at the national level but provincially in Ontario, and then globally after our company expanded into the global market. So that's when I was approached about the safe site concept. The attraction was really around recognizing that this digital wave was only in its beginning, and when you can get the wave when it starts, you can ride it for a long time, and it's kind of dramatic the impact you can make, which is how I got here.
yeah. No, that's interesting, and you remind me of the book Crossing the Chasm, and I don't know if, but
Uh,
it's all about early adopters versus mainstream, which is
Absolutely,
what you've dealt
absolutely.
with in your career.
Absolutely, and it's uncanny. For me, I need to write an article called "Deja Vu All Over Again"
Yeah.
because a lot of what I'm experiencing with executives in the mining sector are the same experiences I had with executives in healthcare and executives in the public sector as they were trying to struggle with the balance between deployed innovation and building infrastructure for that innovation to ride on. And it's an interesting sort of almost chicken and egg because you have it's the application and the deployment of innovation that actually fuels the investment in infrastructure. Nobody's going to take a
Yeah.
mine and make it 5G just for the heck of it.
Yeah.
But if you have applications that people see value in, then it'll be like, damn, I need that on surface from underground. How do I get that? Well, now you're talking about robust Wi-Fi, 5G capabilities, and it's like you buy a Porsche, you want a highway, not
Yeah.
a back road to
Yeah.
run it on. And that's really, I think, the struggle that's going on in mining. And it's really our struggle as a company, as an innovator, is we come up with a lot of these Porsches, and there is a desire to adopt, and then there's the struggle of, well, do we have the infrastructure, both human and
That's
technology,
mining.
to drive? Yeah, exactly,
You described mining. That's
exactly, hundred
and
percent.
and the other thing, I'm off to, I'll get back on
Hey, don't
topic in
worry
a
about
minute, but I
topic.
find this
We're just
interesting.
gonna have fun, man.
Yeah,
So
is is the whole idea. I talk a lot about enabling technologies,
yes,
and what I'm beginning to see is what we used to consider enabling technologies are now the technologies.
yeah.
There's a subtle transition happening here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the thing that I learned in my previous lives is that enabling technologies quickly become disabling technologies
Oh,
when
okay.
you rely on them.
Yeah.
So it's like, when you get to a point of utility, when it's an expected service that you expect to be available 100% of the time, you then base your business and your productivity and your value chain on it. The minute it doesn't work, it now disables your operation. One of the things I think
Yeah.
that we've done as part of our corporate DNA is create a very robust support capability underneath the technology. So we build, we support, we configure, we invent, and we put a very high priority on after it's deployed, who's supporting it? How do we make sure the client is never disabled by something we've given them? And I think that the mining sector, as they become more um, entrenched with the adoption of high tech, they're going to have to recognize that it's not enough for a vendor to sell you something and tell you that it's a wonderful product. You have to say, what's the SLA? And that has to be given a lot of weight, because the minute you don't and it doesn't work, you are now not producing, which, is the cardinal sin, right?
You can't let the naysayers say I told you so, or the doubting Thomas
Exactly.
say, see,
Exactly.
and that's part of the
100,
adoption challenge.
yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
We have models that we've created to ensure that, our client using our technology is never out of production or out of
Yeah.
operation for more than 24 hours. And I think that, one of the things like I said, I didn't grow up in mining, and I spent the first year involved in this company underground, following surveyors and other folks around to understand their situation. When I was younger and I was automating some of the correctional facilities in Ontario, I actually worked admit and discharge in the Don jail, etc.,
Okay.
to understand. I think you have to know what they're going through. And one of the things I learned very early is you don't affect the cadence of mining.
Yeah.
You can have a great piece of technology. If it slows down 15 minutes worth of work, it's out. It's safer, but it's out. It doesn't make sense,
Yeah.
right? So I think that one of the things people have to pay attention to is, as you deploy innovation, ask yourself the question: if this doesn't work, how long can it not work before it
Yeah.
now affects tons per day and
Yeah.
grams per ton, right?
Good. And
Yeah.
I just made a note here. Mike spent time in the Don jail.
Yes, exactly.
Probably not on your resume quite that way.
I leave that part out.
Okay. So this is mining now. So I do
Yeah,
want to
sure.
talk
Yeah.
about mining.
Why we should a bit.
So uh, I always try and key on some terms. I'm a
Sure.
word guy,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
the whole idea of digital assets
Yeah.
I find really interesting, and you talk about it a bit. And
Yeah.
can you
Yeah.
expand on that?
Sure. Like, I think that I know that in the sector right now, everyone has a software package in which they have their mine plan, and to a certain degree, they have some of the surveying that's done, and that digital image is included in there. I think that what certainly from our perspective, what we're seeing is we're creating a massive amount of digital assets. I don't know how else to describe them,
Yeah.
that didn't exist before. So,
Okay.
for example, our shaft service can digitally create a digital twin of the as-is situation to a millimeter of accuracy in any shaft.
Yeah.
That didn't exist before.
No.
Now, if you think about, hey, I could do that every 6 months, and I could compare those digital assets to look for deviation. Well, now you've got 6 months, a year, 2 years worth of digital image that you can then look for trending and regression against a shaft, a stope that didn't exist before. And I think that's one of the struggles that will show itself soon in mining. I know that in previous sectors, after you get past infrastructure and adoption, what you run into is a massive amount of data that you now have to manage more
Yeah.
effectively than you ever did before.
And that scares those of us that don't understand data. That
Absolutely.
scares the heck out of us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And we've created, which we'll be sort of making more public shortly, a cloud-based portal that organizes all of the data from any of our technology in a way that ensures that it's globally accessible, and that it's well organized. And so it makes it a little easier to manage the volume. But what can be produced now with the technology is light years ahead of the data you had to manage before. And I think
Yeah.
that people need to start recognizing it's not just an asset; it's a capital. It's a piece of capital, right? It has
Right.
value, right? So I think that that's something that I'd like to kind of raise the awareness of executives around and say, think about that. Don't just think about the sexy Porsche you're buying.
Yeah.
Think about all the implications of that particular piece of equipment.
Let's talk about our heavy industry tour brought to you by Savannah Equipment, supplying mining equipment worldwide, and Corporate Traveler Canada, helping companies travel the globe simpler, faster, and easier. We are heading to events across North America, Africa, and Australia, and filming episodes on location. Email us at info@crownsman.com to be part of Crownsman's Heavy Industry World Tour. HF Sinclair, which includes the Petro-Canada Lubricants brand, is a proud sponsor of the show. Petro-Canada Lubricants products and services are proven to maximize equipment performance, productivity, and overall savings. From heavy-duty engine oils to hydraulic fluids, ATFs, gear oils, and greases, Petro-Canada Lubricants is committed to delivering innovative solutions that deliver value and keep businesses moving. They have dedicated technical expertise, knowledge, and know-how to help customers in the mining industry operate smoothly with improved equipment reliability and performance, and help support mining operations corporation's ESG goals. Learn more at lubricants.petro-canada.com or contact them at 1-866-335-3369 to arrange a call with one of their technical experts. North Isle's mission is to be Canada's leading sustainable resource company and is on the TSX Venture Exchange under the symbol NCX. North Isle owns the North Island Project, the most developable copper-gold project in Canada. The North Island Project has compelling project economics, is near infrastructure, has tremendous exploration upside, and has leading-edge Indigenous engagement and support from all levels of government. 2023 could be the biggest year yet. Learn more by visiting northisle.ca or by calling them at 778-638-2515 or emailing them at info@northisle.ca. At OIM Consulting, they drive profitability by building your supervisory capability. They equip the people who carry your culture, engage your teams, and ensure that daily targets are achieved. If you want measurable operational results, visit oimconsulting.com. Analyze, improve, sustain.
Well, the term digital assets, and when I applied it directly to mining, I thought about an ore body,
Sure.
and there's waste and there's ore.
Sure.
So the asset has a lot of waste, but you're trying to find the grade, and you need people that understand it to
Absolutely.
really tell you the valuable information.
Absolutely. And I think if you can, like we're looking now to the future of building tools that can, excuse the pun, mine that data for what is the sweet spot of information. And if you look at other sectors who are more mature than the mining sector, that's one of the things that they do really well is they mine the data that they've collected. So there is waste in there, and there is parts you throw away. But if you can get to the core of what is of real value, then essentially there is power in that, and there is trend data in that. One of the things that I want to start a campaign around is I think you get the behavior you reward, and I don't see the government or the insurance sector rewarding mining for trying to step into this digital pool, right?
Yeah.
My question is, for example, for insurers is, well, if a mining sector is collecting this data because they now have the ability to collect the digital asset and they're putting technology in place that removes workers from harm's way, reduces risk, they're operating safer. Why don't they get a cut? Why don't they get a reduction in the cost of the premium to insure that site? If they did that, then mine sites would be more encouraged to adopt and take more risk in taking on new technology.
There's an added return on
Exactly.
investment.
And I think, there are very few, maybe very few is not a fair word, but there are only a select group of organizations that have elected to be first in on a lot of technology. A phrase that just to me was a shocker was this whole I want to be, first to be second.
Yeah.
Which I get in terms of risk averseness and, shareholder value, et cetera, et cetera. But at the same time, if everyone does that, it's very difficult for innovators to move forward and actually apply innovation. You need it. Like I tell our guys, they build anything and they tell me in the lab it works. Nothing is working until it's been underground. Because underground does not cooperate. It does not want you there almost.
It's not the ideal.
Exactly. So I think that, all of those things really wrap around the digital asset. I think recent changes the government's making in the Health and Safety Act are a step forward to encourage the adoption of technology. And if that rewards a mine by saying I can be compliant by using the technology, the health and safety elements, again, that's a reward, and that should encourage investment, which is what I need as an innovator. And I think that everyone benefits from that, both at a site level and within the industry itself.
So we're gonna go there because there's an interesting story here, and we're gonna talk about vertical mining, which
love it.
I'm very familiar with.
Yes.
And so I need to tell you why I'm so interested in this. I think it was 1983, I got hurt in a race.
Oh, really?
And I was up in the race survey.
Oh, wow.
And I won't go into the detail on it, but this is something that would have prevented that all those years ago. We didn't have any digital assets.
No, exactly.
Digital was, we had 4 digitals and 2 thumbs. But but let's talk about that vertical mining, because you guys are doing some great things, and it's not just the naysayers, but you had to deal with legislation too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very, very encouraged. It took 2 years for the adoption of change. So for folks who don't know, In Ontario, the Health and Safety Act being modified, Section 63(1), subsection 2, which used to say, hey, if you're in a new development, the supervisor has to go into that development before a worker goes in after every blast or at the beginning of a shift.
Inspect the face.
Inspect the face, which if you could imagine, going into an elevator shaft and somebody saying, I don't know, the top might fall out on you, but, have a peek.
Yeah.
Right.
You got to look at it
Exactly.
first.
We'll go in after you. And so this technology, the sort of the legislation, had said the supervisor must go in, period.
Yeah.
And we lobbied and worked with ministers and their staff to recommend, along with the Ontario Mining Safety Association and the labor and safety groups, to recommend a small change that said or technology, right, or robotic technology, which will be active September 1.
But not a small. It's
It's three
just
words.
a couple of words.
3 words, but
it's a big.
it was a mountain.
Yeah.
It was a mountain.
And that's been an issue in our industry for many years, especially in the Almac race, where and so for the benefit of the audience,
Sure.
what this does is it eliminates the exposure of the supervisor, because if you're going to inspect it first, you're exposing more people to that hazard.
Absolutely.
And that eliminates that. So
Absolutely.
it's a big deal in our mine development industry. That's
Yeah,
for
I
sure.
agree. I think it also, I'm hoping that demonstrates a trend of government to then recognize how they can, in small ways, influence and assist in the technology adoption in this sector.
Yeah.
I mean, this little change now means that no human has to go into an unknown void.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, a big step forward. And to be clear, that little piece of technology is not only visually looking for any issues, it's creating a 3D model of everywhere it goes. It's
So is it
it's surveying. It does a survey,
in old school
which you
technology
which you
terminology?
can which you can georeference if you want, if you've got total stations at the top at the nest. So you can kind of snap that into your site plan to see, is my as is against my plan. It is taking gas readings, so you get all the peak levels when it comes down. So we looked at all of the, what are the biggest risks in that vertical
Yeah.
space,
Yeah.
and said, how can we mitigate them? So we can mitigate the air quality, we can mitigate the orientation, and we can take video and HD images to make sure that there's nothing with the rail install that might be a flag,
Yeah.
and that certainly that the face has no hangups or there's no issues. It has added benefit in that you get to peek at the drill pattern, make sure the guys aren't rushing it.
Yep.
And all of that, what we then did was the unit takes all of that information and puts it on the cloud. So now if I'm a geotech in Toronto managing a site and
Anywhere.
I can kind of look at the results of the last shift survey and video and face,
Yep.
and I can make recommendations as a geotechnical expert to say, hey, you know what, next shift, the shift plan should look like this. So I think that you put all that together and it really transforms or reduces the level of risk in that with that technology.
Okay, so let's give a special thank you to one of our longest sponsors of the show, Savanaugh Equipment. And I'm actually going to hand it over to Jared so that he can give you a little bit more info on Savanaugh Equipment.
Yeah, thank you. So I mean, people see them as sponsors, so they'll ask me, kind of who they are, what they are, and just trying to understand the scope of the company. So Savanaugh Equipment is a mining supply company, and they're delivering on the whole equipment supply chain. So everything from the ore processing to underground mining, open pit. They're in hard rock and placer operations. And what they're doing is they're sourcing equipment from all over the world and then delivering it all over the world. Now, they are a Canadian company, so they're based there, but, let's say, they're selling entire ore processing plants. So there might be a plant down in Latin America, and there's a new mine that needs that plant in Africa or somewhere in the US. So they're facilitating that entire transactions. But they're also delivering, an individual conveyor or a concentrator or a pump package or just an electrical package. So it really is the whole gambit of the mining equipment supply chain.
Oh, that's great then. Well, then you definitely have to check them out. If you're looking for mining equipment, visit them at savanaghequipment.com, where you will find more equipment every day. With Fender Dunlop, you know you are getting the best conveyor belting in the market. That's because they ensure the integrity of their conveyor belting by monitoring each step of the manufacturing process in their North American facilities. Focused attention is given to each belting order to guarantee that they produce a belt that will assist the customer in reducing operation costs, maximizing uptime, and improving revenue. Visit FenderDunlopAmericas.com to learn more. Created and designed by industry leaders with decades of frontline experience, Sophie is a platform that brings workers home every day. Give your workforce the communication tools they need on the job to do it safely and productively. Visit Sophie.com today to discover how you can leverage Sophie to increase efficiencies, mitigate risk, and optimize collaboration. Safer, smarter, Sophie.
When you talk about the engineers or the technicians looking at the face, for me, it's the miners.
Yeah.
The next shift. If you
Absolutely.
can look at the face and see what your cross shift left you,
Yeah.
we won't get into shift cross shift
Yeah. Sure.
relationships,
Sure.
but and then the other thing I noted down, you talked about the mining environment.
Sure.
Vertical razor environment is even more unforgiving.
Yes, absolutely.
So
Absolutely. And
it has to be robust.
yeah, I think, in this, the exciting thing for me as a technology is this is just the tip of the iceberg. Could you imagine if we put AI on that unit and it could evaluate what it's seeing in terms of the survey and the rail and the bolt patterns and the actual installation of the bolts in the rail? If it could come back down to, because when it returns, the supervisor can watch the video, can look at the high def images, and can see a visualization of the actual raise itself.
Yeah.
Now, they still may want to go into the raise to do further inspection, but at least now it's not an unknown void
Yeah.
any longer.
Yeah.
Now, could you imagine if it also produced an AI report that said, hey, based on best practice or based on the condition or based on the geotechnical information you've put into my system, here's some cautionary notes.
Yeah.
And that, again, could be not only available to the supervisor at the start of the shift, but also to any geotechnical or supervisory staff that are working remotely at the
Yeah.
cloud.
The other, the extension of that is if you can develop best practices, not regulations or even guidelines,
Yeah.
but best practices that can form the basis of that AI,
Yeah,
then
absolutely.
that's now every mind's a little different, but there are some things that
Some themes, yeah.
that
Yeah.
run across.
Yeah, exactly. I think, I look at it like, everybody gets a cold, but what works for you and responding to that
Yeah.
cold is slightly different than what works for me.
Yeah.
I'm Italian, so we just eat. Anytime we're sick, just eat.
Yeah.
But you
I find beer is
there you go.
that's
See,
our other.
it's more of an Icelandic approach, I guess. But it's really looking at those best practices
Yeah.
and working with the industry to say, what if there is a series of decision points or decision informant data that we can put in the system, then why can't that? I mean, it's just a little robot running up the rail and back. Why not maximize its effort and get it to tell you anything that you think you want it to have be mindful of, sort of thing. Yeah.
So when you say it's just a little robot, I find it very interesting because there's two distinct technologies
Mhm.
involved. There is the digital capture
Yep.
technology,
Yep.
but then there's the mechanical because it's got to get up there on its
Yes.
own, the robot
Yeah,
itself.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think, I mean, we have worked several years at trying to, and I think we're actually deploying the next generation of the climber this month.
Okay.
And the mechanism, the mechanical engineering that allows it to climb the rail has evolved and is now sort of more adaptive. What we learned in the field is that not all rails are created equally.
Yep.
And they're not installed equally
We
either.
learned that too.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So our biggest challenge was, and our goal was, that there was nothing that would obstruct this on the rail. What
Yeah.
we don't want to happen is the unit be stuck at 250 feet.
Yeah.
And so we've been working and modifying the attachment mechanism to make it lighter, faster, and more able to essentially adapt to any obstacle that might be in the rail. Anything from loose caught in the open link
Yeah.
to just wonky rails
Yeah.
that have aged or been installed
Yeah.
not perfectly aligned, kind of thing. So I think that's a big piece of it. And then really it is the integration of several technologies. There's LiDAR technology, there's camera technology, there's LED technology, all of which, and this is the thing that really, as a technologist, as part of my mojo here, is that
Yeah.
they are all burgeoning technologies. They haven't even crested yet.
Yeah.
I tell some of the staff who are much younger than me, I remember when a cell phone was the size of a Kleenex box. And now, the cell phone in your pocket is probably as powerful as a laptop on your desk.
Yeah.
And all of the technology we're applying in mining, from the LiDAR to the LEDs, are all at the Kleenex box level. They're all about to become smaller, cheaper, and more effective.
Okay.
So I
Kleenex,
think
I was doing punch cards. That's so.
I hear you. I was when I was at Waterloo my first year. I was loading punch card.
Fortran,
Fortran,
Waterloo was
yes,
famous for
yeah,
Fortran.
yeah. I was a
Was their
Fortran
claim to
boy.
fame.
Yeah, exactly.
So none of this happens without collaboration. And I had in the notes here about your collaboration with Vale.
Yeah, I think that we have. I think one of the things that we've done well as a company is developed an ethic and a methodology around collaboration. I think from my perspective, first we collaborate, then we configure, and then we cultivate. Really is, and we do that in conjunction with whomever we've been fortunate enough to sort of come into a relationship with.
Yeah.
So with Vale, we collaborated on shaft measurement. We had basically several years ago used in motion LiDAR to measure a shaft for them. Did the job, did it quick, no interruption operation, except it was 3 centimeters of accuracy. They came back a year later and said, "Can you figure this out to a millimeter?" And we worked on a project with them interactively for about a couple years to get it to perfection.
You can't install to a millimeter, by the way. So if
Yeah,
you can check
yeah.
to a millimeter,
Well,
you'll.
this is the thing, and I think again, as a neophyte,
Yeah.
I mean, I get a set of specifications.
Yep.
I deliver to those specifications. However, the shaft manager, like, dude,
Yeah.
I don't need that much. I'm not
Yeah.
sending somebody in there to move the 16th of an inch.
Yeah.
3/4, okay, I can do a work order off that. But essentially, what the task we were given was, I'm going to measure this manually, and
Yeah.
I'm going to look at your LiDAR scan, and they better be within an
Yeah.
millimeter of variance,
Yeah.
which is
Okay.
what we were able to do.
Yeah.
And really, I think, again, this is one of those things where, as we deploy to a site, we look to that site to say, what are your specifics? Which is why configuration is so important. Even after we've developed a solution, whether it's the rail runner for vertical or shaft measurement or our mine rescue technology, when we deploy, the first question we ask is, what's your configuration requirements?
Yeah.
We understand that there may be unique needs to that site. And because we invent, we design, we build and support, we don't have to ask anybody to make a modification to product.
Yeah.
It's just like, hey, what do you need? We got the blueprints. We can change whatever you want. So I think, and we've collaborated with Redpat and with cementation on the vertical mining side of things to move that yardstick forward. And we've collaborated with Newmont around mine rescue and some of our underground mapping technologies. And they've even pulled in Ontario Mine Rescue to help us understand and again configure to meet the needs of a responder. So really, that's a big part of who we are.
So you talked about the shaft, which and we could talk about this for hours.
Oh, yeah.
But understanding what the information the operators really need is important. We get
Agreed.
back to that idea of you've got all this data, and the operators don't necessarily know how to use it. So you have to understand what they need
Exactly.
in order to shape it to their benefit.
Yeah, and I think to do that, you need to sort of walk in their boots,
Yeah.
right? You need to really be there, and I think again, there's some things we've done right as a company here. We have taken the time to try and invest ourselves as miners so that we really understand the needs of the client.
Yeah.
We've been very strong on collaboration, and we've focused a lot on support on the back end to make sure that we can define a strong SLA. We have the technologies to live up to the SLAs we define. Because we know in the future that enabling technology can be disabling technology,
Yeah.
and until you kind of, if you can help your client feel secure in that, it's not just about, I got the sale, I got the PO,
Yeah.
you got the product, have a nice life.
Yeah.
I think over time that will bode well for us as a company.
Yeah. Good. I've got all kinds of things I want to
Sure,
talk to you
sure.
about, but I don't. I'm gonna ask you if there's any final thoughts you want to share with the audience before we sign off.
Sure. Yeah, I think that I think the messages that I would want people to have out there are really, if the sector wants to really continue to reap the harvest of innovation, they have to have the ability to take on a little bit of risk. in our organization, we try and share that risk.
Yeah.
We're currently working on a new way to measure ore passes to a millimeter of accuracy, and crushers. Except we can't do that on our own. We have the concepts and the innovation and the technology, but we're looking for willing partners to share that risk, so we can, much like we've done with other technologies. So I think the industry, if we can get more people wanting to be first to deploy as opposed to be second, the first to be second,
Yeah.
that would be a big thing. I think I would challenge the insurance industry and the government to work together to try and find ways to demonstrate um, uh, reward for those sites that really aggressively move to adopt technology. I don't think anyone will argue that if you have technology that removes a worker from a harm's way, there's no way for them to get hurt.
Yep.
And if the technology can demonstrate that it effectively does that without changing the cadence of operation, in fact, speeding it up,
Yeah.
then I think that the industry and the government should find a way to reward sites and reward companies who can do that, and I think that, final word is I hope people will keep an eye on us and follow us. And if they have a challenge they think they can't master, they give us a call, because that's what really helps us get out of bed in the morning.
Well, I want to, and you know what? I want to emphasize
Yep.
something, because for people that don't know what Alamac raising is,
Sure.
and you talked about those three little words in the legislation,
Hmm.
changing legislation is a huge deal.
Absolutely.
And just because there's a technology out there that can make things safer, there's still concern about changing legislation. So I've got to applaud you and your partners, all the people that worked
Thank
on
you
that.
very much.
A lot of work, and it's making your industry safer. So
Absolutely. Absolutely.
thank you
Thank
for
you.
that. And thank you for your time today.
Oh,
It's been
hey,
great to
it's
chat with you.
always fun. Yeah, I mean, we could go
I see
on
you
and-
often.
yeah.
I never have the
Yeah,
chance to chat.
exactly.
So this was really good.
Exactly.
So
Yeah, it was great sitting down with you.
great to see, hear
Absolutely.
about SafeSight and hear how it's protecting our people. And thank you, our audience, for another great Mining Now show.